So welcome, it's really great to see everybody. I'm really excited to welcome you to this webinar on embodied producing with Iris Chan. My name is Amy Bell and I'm the artist development producer at the place. My sign name is like this, like a jangling bell. My pronouns are they, them, and if you find audio description useful, I'm a white person in my late 30s. I've got a shaved head, got chunky glasses on and a pink top. I'm in a room at the place. It's got a quite white nondescript background with a picture of some dancers, and that's why I might sound a little bit echoey, so because I'm in an empty meeting room. I am really excited to be welcoming Iris Chan today. She's going to lead the session for the next hour or so. And I wanted to invite Iris as someone who, perhaps like you as well, is really straddling and working against sort of binary divisions that we might sometimes come up against between embodied practice, dance practice, creative practice, and producing practice. So as well as many other roles that she has, she's particularly, I think, someone who brings a lot of skill and expertise in how to navigate those things. So I'm really looking forward to Iris unpacking a little bit of that with us today. So I'm just going to welcome you now, Iris. Hello, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing really well, Amy. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and really excited to be here and to see everyone.
Great. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Iris, and then we'll get going?
Sure. So my name is Iris Chan and my pronouns are she and her. And for those who audio's description would be useful, I will describe what I look like. So I am East Asian, I have long black hair that's kind of down to about chest level, and I'm wearing a short sleeve green t-shirt today, and I have a little house plant next to me, and I'm currently sitting on a chair, but I might move to a standing up position depending on how we get on. So I'm also in a fairly empty flat that I've just moved into, so apologies if I'm also a little bit echoey, but I hope you can all hear me clearly. So it's really wonderful to be here, and thank you, Amy, for inviting me to facilitate this. I want to just emphasize that today I really want it to be just an hour that we have for ourselves to take some time to have some time for self-reflection, for self-enquiry, to remind ourselves of what we already do, what we have, and maybe opening up some curiosity and some questions to what we want to do more of and what we want to learn more about. And I really want to recognise that everyone's journeys are unique and individual. So just hoping that me sharing a bit of what I've been navigating may help prompt some of your own questions as well. So I'll start the webinar with some survey questions, just to get a sense of who everyone is here today, and I'll also read them out for those of you who are watching this webinar later on, if you're watching the recording, so you can also think about them in your own time. I'll speak a little bit about myself and my practice and my journey through navigating this dancing and producing and managing and coordinating and being injured, being in rehearsal, being touring, and all the various lives that we lead as a dancer and as a practitioner. And then I will offer us a few experiential tasks, just to bring us into our bodies and our current physical, emotional, mental states, just very small kind of check-ins, just to play a little bit before we kind of explore what embodied producing might mean. And I will then talk about the different aspects of producing, where I think there might be overlap in the skills between the roles we have as dance artists, as performers, as choreographers, and what knowledge we bring towards producing practice. And then there'll be some time for a kind of self-interview inquiry exercise that I'll also guide us through, just some questions to help us think about situations or circumstances where there might be things that you could bring into managing a future project or to help you drive something forwards. And actually for that task, if you have some paper or a notebook or a pen, or opening a separate window on your device to type on, that would be helpful for later on. So I'd like to start with some questions, and the first one is a poll that Amy's already prepared, and that is, what roles do you currently identify with? And it can definitely be more than one, and I just invite you to choose or select however many that you feel relate to you at the moment, and just to get a sense of where everyone is at right now. This is great. This is the first time I've used this, so it's really nice to see it moving. Okay. Should we just give a few more moments just to get everyone's results in?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think we're almost there, aren't we?
Great. Okay. That's really interesting. So we've got mostly choreographers, artists, makers here. And yeah, about 5 people who've said self-producing artist, 1 person is a dancer, performer, and produce, and 3 who've said producer for choreographers, artists and makers. So thank you, Amy. I think we can stop sharing that.
Yes, I can, although somebody's just pointed out that you could actually only vote for one option when that's an error. So apologies about that. That was unintended, but maybe that just goes to show how we're often forced into one category where we don't want to be. So apologies about that.
No worries. Thank you, Amy. Yes, it's definitely just what I think society is always trying to do, to like put us in boxes and categories, and definitely we'll be talking about that a bit more, just how I've through my career wanting to resist that. So how do we share the results, or can we close it?
I think that's closed now, right?
Okay, I'm just gonna click share.
Yeah.
I think can everyone see the results? No, okay, I'm gonna click share, and then hopefully everyone can see that. Okay. Great. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for trying to put yourself in a box. And I think we'll move on. So it's really, yeah, it's interesting for me because I'm coming from a place of working mostly as a dancer and a performer for other artists and choreographers, and also working as a producer for other companies and artists. So I actually don't have a self-producing or making kind of practice, or it's very minimal. So I want to just share that, to say that that's kind of where I'm coming from, and the sort of reflections that I've come up with have come from that place as a mostly performer dancer. So a second question I'd like to ask is, what do you like about what you do? What do you enjoy or feel proud of these roles that you've selected, that you say you feel you identify with? So is it about you enjoy bringing an artistic idea into reality, about sharing art with people who otherwise wouldn't have encountered it? I would love it if we can share some of this in the chat. If you feel comfortable with that, just sharing it publicly with everyone here. Just, it's only within the group here, so not in the recording. Is that right, Amy?
Yeah, I can read them out, but I won't use your names. So yeah, feel free to let loose in the chat.
And maybe we'll just take a minute to do that.
It also doesn't have to be the definitive answer, right? I mean, I think, top of the head responses, I think, are also welcome.
Yeah, like gut instinct, like when someone asks why you enjoy what you do. Oh, brilliant, there's lots coming in. Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll read a couple of these. So, expressing my deepest human experiences through my body as a conduit. Someone else's, when specific projects reach people or touch people. Another person, seeing work together with an audience, knowing that I've helped to make that happen. Someone else, visual storytelling, bringing dance or physicality to new audiences. There's loads of, I would definitely encourage people to scroll through the checks, there's loads, but I'll just read a few random ones. Being able to handle or tackle a range of hurdles that inevitably pop up. Learning and sharing. Supporting an artist reach their artistic vision. And yeah, there's loads of different brilliant ones in there. Slotting together our different skills to make work happen. Yeah.
Thank you everyone. That's really wonderful. Yeah, sharing creative experience with others as well. Thank you. So then the last question I'm going to ask is, again, these feel free to populate the chat with your responses. And the question is, what does producing mean to you and what does it involve?
Again, probably doesn't need to be the dictionary definition. It's like, you know, maybe it involves lots of things. Okay, we've got some here. Bringing the performance to life, making stuff happen, making things happen. I'm just going to switch over interpreters right now. Bringing an idea into tangibility, into tangible reality that all can be proud of. Holding the purse strings, filling the purse, being organised. Bringing art to life from inception to creation to production. Long sustained support to artists. Showing, someone's put quite simply. Logistics, knowing who to ask to get permission or knowledge. Making something, solving problems, supporting ideas, collaborating, dealing with operational aspects. Enabling the making of creative work, bringing together different aspects of the production. Planning, seeing things, foreseeing things. Like again, massive range of responses there. I think it's already useful to see how people characterize it.
Thank you. It's also really great that it's so kind of wider picture. I think when I was thinking about my own responses, I was really breaking it down, like, you know, from beginning to end of a project, like all the different steps that are required, like fundraising, application writing, managing the budget, communicating the idea, building a team, resourcing people, resourcing materials, scheduling, but just, yeah, the actual, like what it is trying to make someone's work happen and to make art happen and to make it shareable and communicable. So yeah, really wonderful to see all these responses. Thank you. So I'll just talk a little bit about myself. I'm just aware time is passing very quickly. So just about how I've navigated the last maybe like 8 to 10 years that I've been working in London, and how I have I kind of started off actually in a mostly office-based kind of job as an administrator. And during that time, I carried on dancing. So after I graduated from university, I sort of was working in London, trying to get a feel of what the dance sector is, and going to see shows and just doing classes in my own time. And gradually, as I left that job and decided to go freelance, that's how I started producing. So I need to make clear that I don't have any formal education or training in producing. The closest that I've had was around 2015. I was part of the first producer development scheme that was initiated by Southeast Dance in Brighton, and that was about 6 months long, and it was like a weekly kind of meeting that I had with various members of staff there, and with different artists, we spoke to the dramaturgs, we spoke to other producers, we spoke to a tour booker, and that was kind of how I learnt a bit more about the nuts and bolts of producing. But really everything that I've learnt and experiences through just projects that I've worked on and people that I've collaborated with. And a lot of what I've learned through producing has really come from me working as a dancer, working in through touring experience, through different projects that I've sometimes been both a dancer and a producer on. So I can also speak a bit more about that if anyone is grappling with that experience or would like to ask me more about that as well. So in the last few years, I've also been working both within organisations and outside of them. So I've taken on a few like maternity cover roles or interim cover roles for general manager positions. I'm also currently the producer for Frame Rush, which is the Screen Dance Festival that just happened over the weekend. And that's run by the London Contemporary Dance School MA Screen Dance students, and I support them in the production of the festival. And I also work with choreographer Matthias Sperling and on a interdisciplinary research project called Neuro Live, and that's a research project that's funded by the European Research Council, that looks at the experience of liveness and is a collaboration between neuroscience and artistic practices. So that's also maybe some of my interests as well, just at the moment, especially over the last year, what's been happening to the world. What is this experience of liveness? And I think this is kind of linked with this webinar today about how do we know that we are experiencing something live and in our bodies, and how do we stay connected with that, and why is it different from me watching a film that's on a screen compared to me being in a cinema with people around me. So that's also something sort of in the background when I was thinking about this webinar about how do I talk about working in a more embodied way when I'm trying to communicate over a screen and I'm actually in a room by myself and looking at my laptop and trying not to look at myself. So in order to do that, I would like to invite us to just take a little time. I'm going to offer 3 tasks, and we'll just take a minute for each one to explore a little bit, just to be in our bodies. And I will stop speaking once I've given the instruction, the invitation. And you are then welcome to, you can hide your self view, you can turn the video off, you can close your eyes if you would like to, or you can have a soft focus if you prefer to, if you want to stay with the BSL interpreters. Do what is available to you, and you can also be away from the screen, go under the table, lie on the floor. So the first task is, we'll just take a minute to tune inwards into our physical sensation and where is our weight distributed right now. So I'm sitting on a chair at the moment and I can feel my sit bones on the chair and I have my feet on the floor and I'm not wearing socks or shoes, it's just on bare wooden floorboards. So I don't need to name what it is, but just to give ourselves a minute to sense what is gravity's relationship to my body right now. And we'll just take a bit of time. So if you can hear me from where you are, you can continue in whatever position you are in. Otherwise, you can return to the screen if you need to see. So the second task I'm going to invite us to do is just noticing your breath. What pace is your breathing in right now? Where is your breath traveling to in your body? Where does the breath expand inside your body? Is it in your upper chest or your lower ribs, your abdomen? Is it in your neck? Just noticing where it is in the body. And you can explore this in stillness or in movement. And we'll come back in about a minute as well. And you can put a timing device on if that helps, just to know when to come back. That's my timer. Come back. Again, if you can hear me, you can continue whatever position you're in, and otherwise come back and we'll just finish the last task. And this, I invite you to have your eyes open if that's available for you. If not, then you're welcome to also think about the sound in your environment as well. So this is a task that's about noticing distances between you and your surroundings. So can you put your attention to how near or how far you can perceive objects in your environment? So what is the closest thing to you? What's further away? What's really like furthest away from what you can see at the moment, see or hear at the moment, just to get a sense of where we are in place. So the closest thing to me right now is, apart from the chair that I'm sitting on, is this laptop, which is how I'm communicating with you. And next to it I have a glass of water. Further away is a notebook. Further away is the internet router. And then there's a building opposite, and then there's some trees and some clouds. So again, just have a minute to think about that. And maybe notice when you're trying to name things, when you're verbalizing, or when you're just noticing, receiving the information. Great, and if you're ready, let's come back. If you're away from your device, then I invite you to come back to the screen and just take a moment just to see everyone here, say hi if there's anyone here you know. Just imagine that we can see each other. So something I'd like to share quickly is just a podcast that I was listening to by someone called Christine Caldwell, where she talks about this book called Bodyfulness, and she's trying to popularize this term bodyfulness instead of what I think maybe we're quite familiar with, which is the term mindfulness. And I found it really interesting because of a lot of the language that we hear from mindfulness practices are actually a lot to do with waking up to what's happening in our physical experience. And I haven't read the book, it's just this podcast that I was listening to about these principles that she's come up with for what being in bodyfulness means. And one of them is, thank you, Amy, is oscillation, which is what naturally already occurs in our bodies. So activities like breathing, pulsing, like the heartbeat, peristalsis, which is like a wave-like motion, indigestion, and how the mimicking of these rhythms can help regulate us. And I think about it in like my dance practice, like why sometimes exercises like shaking or like rocking and also just tuning into the breath can really help me to regulate. So in situations when I feel like I have been static for a very long time, or I feel very stressed about something or feeling anxiety, then practices like that can sometimes help. And I'd love to, maybe later on we can open up more like sort of tips or suggestions and like strategies that we all have for resisting the working at a desk and being still for a very long time, and how to deal with the psychological kind of resistance that I definitely feel as well. And I'm really curious to hear if other people feel that as well. So that's one thing that I wanted to share. And so now, I'd love to just talk about what does producing mean and what does embodied producing mean. When Amy invited me to speak about this, and they had a question which was, is this actually what I do? And I've been having some conversations with various people who I know, peers and colleagues, and people who've really influenced my practice in my career, and just thinking about what would disembodied producing look like. And maybe I'll invite you all to write that as well if you like to in the chat. What does disembodied producing, what does that mean? Because I think my interpretation of what embodiment means is that we have bodies and we are in a physical experience. So the perception that producing is often very disembodied and very much like on a laptop, on a phone, this kind of resistance that we have maybe as dancers, as practitioners, that like, oh, there's all this admin I have to do and I have to like be completely static and alone or isolated and spending long hours like just in front of a budget trying to sort it out. I think that we have some perceptions of that, and I think in my practice what I've tried to do is really understand what it is that I'm doing and why, and how is that the facilitating of someone's artistic practice and their idea is actually not that different from what I do as a dancer. So I think one thing that I want to also offer is the question of why do I think being a dancer has helped me in producing, and how is it a similar practice? and how do those two roles feed off of each other? How do I practice being in service of or in a facilitation kind of role, in questioning someone, in trying to problem solve, and in the like delving into like the mechanics and nuts and bolts of something, which I think comes with also an understanding of how I am as a dancer, as a performer, what I enjoy getting into when I'm in a rehearsal process. Like, what do I enjoy working out and solving, or am I really in tune with group dynamics? And actually my interest is in trying to cultivate that. So then what do I bring from that into producing, into how I work with the different collaborators and the stakeholders on a project? Like, how do I cultivate that sense of we're all in something together, we're all in service of an idea, of someone's project and someone's artistic vision. So let's just have a look if there's any more responses. Okay, maybe I'll read them out. So why do I think being a dancer has helped me in producing, and how is it a similar practice? So one of them, not noticing how tired the body is, therefore could lead to burnout. Yeah. Oh, and there's a response from previous question. So previous question of what does disembodied producing mean? So shutting off from what the body is asking for. So for food, for moving, going for a pee, while working, producing, usually when overworked or stressed. Yes. Yes, so in the podcast about body fullness, she talks about how our brains actually take up a lot of energy expenditure. Like it takes up about 20 to 25% of our overall energy expenditure every day. And when we are so much in our brain activity, it actually can cause other systems to shut down, like digestion, like immune system, like certain like physiological needs, because we're very much in this like stress or like fear or hypervigilance kind of state. So what I guess what I'm trying to offer is some time to really like make sure we have time to reflect on how we work and how do we work in a healthier, more sustainable way. I definitely don't have any answers or like a way of resolving this, because I think for me there's been throughout the years a lot of like resistance to like I need to be at a computer and that's the only way I can solve this issue that I'm working on this project. And how do I just surrender to the fact that I have to work on it, because the reason for doing it would mean we will know how much we can pay the dancers, or we would know how much we can spend on accommodation for this date. And I think for me also what embodied producing is just me really understanding why it is that I do something, and to not be in a constantly reactive and responsive state where I feel quite vulnerable to demands and timelines, and just cultivating a sense of being curious and being empathetic to the people I'm working with. And I think that maybe it's also what being a dancer sometimes involves, of adapting to different roles, adapting to different materials that you're learning, and different creative processes. Definitely like working from project to project and understanding that I'm not a blank canvas. I bring what I bring from previous experiences, and I have a lot in my toolkit and in my like resources that I can bring up. So I'm just going to take a bit of time to read some more of the responses. So about disembodied producing. Producing is in some ways about working for or on behalf of something or someone else, and it's easy to overwork or fail to set boundaries. When those come together, that feels disembodied. And then, why do I think being a dancer has helped me in producing? How is it a similar practice? So there's problem solving, there's reflective practice, Mind thinks on the task at other times, creatively, subconsciously working out. Yes. Also improvising, resilience, sense of time, knowing how much time things take, definitely, and being prepared to give that time or be in that time. Being in that time. So yeah, definitely being in the present. And yeah, I would also strongly support that as being a way of producing in an embodied way. Also, another one, I've had some really great success in having embodied meetings, meaning that we go to a space as collaborators and team members where we move constantly, improvising body-wise while brainstorming, having conversations. That's brilliant. I'd love to hear more about that. That's also something I'd really like to do. I think for me, it's something I've in various jobs that I've had in the past, also sometimes just going to class, like with the dancers of the company that I'm working with, or going along to a workshop, I think also helps with this breaking down these barriers we have around us and them, or like dancer versus management, or freelancer versus institution. That I think is still, yeah, still quite present in our worlds. And I think what I would like to think about is having more dancers become producers could maybe help cross these divides a bit more. So I'd like to take a moment, if you do have some pen and paper and maybe something to type on, I'll just ask us some questions, and to think about a time when you were working on a project where you felt really supported, you felt you were working within and towards challenges that you were able to meet and arise to, where you felt like you could develop and grow, and where you felt powerful within your body and in yourself, maybe as a dancer, as a performer, maybe as a choreographer, artist, or as a producer. So just take a bit of time to think about like a specific event or a situation. Maybe it was in an audition, maybe it was when you were touring to a new place and you or a problem came up, and how did you solve it. I think the reason why I'm suggesting this is, for me, it's I've learned a lot from being a dancer, from working in artistic projects, and learning when in situations I felt really supported, and understanding what conditions made that happen for me, made me feel comfortable, and what do I take in from that into a producing situation. So I just invite you to think about a specific event or situation when you felt like that, and I'll keep asking questions while you think about this, and feel free to write it on your own device or your notebook. So who was involved in this situation, and what interactions with others did you, or in what interactions with others did you feel supported, did you feel heard, and you felt seen? How much time was spent on this event or situation? And what enabled you to work as your best self? So I hope you've all got something, or a sense of something. So from there, I'd like to now invite you to think of a project that you are working on or about to work on, or something that you're planning for the future. And what are the conditions that you need for it to happen well? What is it you want to achieve? How would you produce or facilitate a decision-making process for that to happen? And especially if you're not the sole decision maker in a project, how can you produce a situation where decisions that you need making can happen? Is there anything that you're able to action right now? And what resources are available to you right now? And I have a few more questions in relation to that I'm curious to see what will come up for you, which is what do I know that I'm good at? What do I not know, and what do I want to learn more about? And do I know what am I not interested in? And what will happen if I communicate this? So I'm going to end the offering of this exercise there, and maybe we can open up to some questions and maybe some more themes that have come up in the chat that maybe anyone would like to delve a bit more into. I definitely have lots more in my notes, and I feel like there's lots more in terms of like what will the future of dance producing look like. I think I was maybe a bit optimistic in suggesting we could talk about post-pandemic producing, but actually we're maybe still very much in it and we don't know yet. But having like a sense of things reopening and like some projects happening again, like what will we learn from the past year, and what can we take forwards, and what do we not want to take on? I'd be really curious to hear that, and just invite any thoughts and reflections as well from just now.
While everybody's thinking of their questions, so do put your hand up or do drop those into the chat. Maybe one point, or I think somebody mentioned it further back in the chat, is something about the rhythms of productivity that we might get sucked into when we're in producer mode. We're in the mode of trying to plan something or make it happen or think about money or logistics. And like, in what ways do you see an awareness of embodiment or care for the body, or these processes of more empathic or reflective decision making? Like, how do you see that? Do you see that in tension or in conversation with, I guess, that sense of pressure around productivity and efficiency or something like that?
something I was thinking about was to do with working hours, and I'm really curious how this will change with the debate that's going on about the right to work from home, and just this loss of the separation of a workspace and a domestic space, this loss that we've had to experience in the last year. I think for a lot of freelancers, and for me, it wasn't really actually so different. Like I had to really use like the skills that I had to like really separate, like when is it work time and when is it sleep time. And I think I'm quite worried how we would go forwards with continuing working from home, even though it allows so much flexibility and accommodation of different needs and different caring responsibilities that we might have. I don't have an answer. I'm really curious what other people think about the pressure of productivity. Is that what you're asking, Amy?
Yeah, and how that can sometimes feel like it's pulling you outside of your body. Somebody's put in response to that, a journalist, they've forgotten who, said, it's not that we are now working from home, it's that we're living at work.
Yeah.
Which is interesting spin on that.
I don't think I have like an answer to pressure of productivity, but I definitely have some thoughts of how we can alleviate some of the sense of like isolation. I think being a producer can sometimes feel quite lonely, and especially if you're a self-producing artist. And I think what's helped me is speaking to other producers. That's really, really helped me in the past. And there will be some resources that I will share with Amy that will be sent to everyone. And some of them are some producer Facebook groups, and also a really great resource website called producergathering.com that was started by two producers, freelance producers, with lots of resources and guides and free downloads and templates. That's more practical, but I think just reminding myself that there are a lot of other freelance producers out there doing the same thing has helped. And another thing I think is just reminding ourselves that we are not what we do. We are human beings. We have a creative spirit. We have an inner artist, and that has nothing to do with the roles that you take on in your work. And for me, and this is only very, very recently, cultivating something creative, like a creative activity that has nothing to do with dancing or my work, that is something that I don't know anything about, but I will just, something that is very low stakes, but can remind myself that I'm also a person first.
That's a great point, Iris, because I think that sometimes, especially if you've come from a dance or a performance practice where you physically are your work,
yes,
it can be, and that's in part what makes you good at it, is that very close identification with the work. It's really important to also find ways to make separation and understand yourself as a whole being with other needs, right, outside of that. So yeah, that's a very helpful point, I think. I just wanted to raise something in the chat that someone had pointed out, thinking about this pressure of productivity or something. Someone's put here, it raises the issue of value, how we ask for enough resource to take the time we need, and how we stand firm against the wider context of capitalism, being willing to risk saying, this is how much time it takes, and this is the value.
Yes, and I think that's something that being in bodily experience, in physical experience, that is non-negotiable in certain structures of power, that, you know, the body is how it is and what it needs. And, you know, I have physical needs and responses. And I think that's maybe one positive thing from the pandemic that we can take forwards, that are just noticing or recognizing that, you know, we are also animals on this planet, and we need access to nature, we need daily exercise, we need to have, you know, basic level of self-care in order to do what we want to do, and just cannot be neglected, and we can't become these computers and disembodied brains. I love another thing from this podcast I was listening to that she said is that our minds are what our bodies do, that us being in our brains is us being in our bodies too, and we can't separate the two activities. And maybe one thing I also want to share is just different kind of like strategies or like ways of working that I find can help me. So I quite often work like standing up, or I work like standing on one leg, or just kind of silly things to like trick myself into remembering that I am not like completely sucked into this screen, that I am, you know, I'm trying to balance at the same time. Or sometimes just taking like a music break, or, you know, just put a song on and just thrash around the room for a bit and then come back. So any other tips that anyone has, be very welcome. Yes, Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes. Setting timer I find really helpful as well. I'm not very good at it, but setting timer for yes, I'm just going to do focus 25 minutes of work and then 5 minutes of moving. That's also really helpful. Someone says doodling. Yes. Yeah.
What is Pomodoro technique?
It's I can't remember where it comes from, but maybe the person suggesting it could, I'm sure there's a website for it, but it's basically setting a timer for 25 minutes where you work for 25 minutes, and then for 5 minutes you can have a rest and move around, and then just to kind of focus your attention so it doesn't feel like time is like ever expanding, and also helps with maybe like procrastinating.
Yeah, it makes me think about different people's styles and rhythms, that, you know, we have different tempos or different nature of attention is different for different people as well. People have put here meditation, breathing techniques, yoga, classics, always good, aren't they? Someone else, Pomodoro technique, 45 minutes work, 15 minutes break, about 2 to 4 rounds or so. I think that's what that person said. Temptation bundling, e.g., I can only have a cup of tea if I am working. So that's quite useful. I guess giving yourself rewards or like little goals. Someone else has put, I find the separation tricky. The choreographer I produce will rehearse 9 to 5, so I meet him before and after. The pace of work is very fast, and with COVID changes happening constantly, being in the room with artists helps, but can be time consuming. The pressure is intense at the moment, and trying to make a show within COVID restrictions and dealing with licensing, etc., time management and self-care is important, but mostly seeing the work and remembering the aspirations for the work. And that connects to something you said earlier, Iris, isn't it, about having a sense of kind of felt purpose that anchors what you're doing, perhaps.
Also, definitely with the working hours situation, something I felt very intensely before when I was both performing and producing on the same production, that your producing time becomes the time before rehearsal and the time after rehearsal. And I think going forwards, it's definitely something I mean, also within creative processes now, I question, like, do we have to work 10 to 6? Do we have to work? Because by the time it's 4 o'clock, most people can't really focus in a rehearsal room anyway. Like I definitely think, there's something interesting about shortening the workday, and actually would that help us be more productive in a sense, but also actually having time off and time to rest, and something I used to think about. I don't know how helpful it is, or is it just perpetuating this like idea of productivity, but the idea of rest being really important for work. Like if I don't rest, I can't really function well. And to protect that time is really important. And comes from dance practice as well.
Yeah, I think that's a massive one. There's something there about a felt sense of time rather than time coming from the outside. You know, I'm just going to drop here in the chat some resources that Iris has proposed for everybody. If you're watching the video, you should be able to download that on the same page, so we'll make that available. It's pretty much 3 o'clock. There are still some comments coming, so do you have a flick through those? This is maybe an interesting final one. Ayurvedic principles around circadian rhythms, food, individual schedules for your type of dosha. So it's like understanding holistically what your kind of physical setup might require and taking an individual approach, I guess, to that. It's quite interesting. I also just want to say that there's one remaining webinar left, which is this Wednesday, which is led by Melly Brooms. It's a process of creating resources for people of colour in the arts. And I'm just going to drop the information there. Otherwise, if there's other webinars in this series that you missed and you want to catch up on, there's already some videos online and there'll be more following, so do check those out. And yeah, I feel like this has hopefully opened a few different avenues of thought and reflection for you. It certainly did that for me. So yeah, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone who's come along. Thank you for your wonderful presence and attention today. Thank you to Stacey and Erin also for your interpretation. And yeah, a massive thank you to Iris for proposing this space and sharing with us your thoughts and ideas.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, I'm really happy to be contacted and to carry on conversation.
Great, brilliant. Okay, well, I hope everybody has a good rest of your afternoon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.